Hello and welcome to Profiles in Risk. This is your host, Tony Cañas. Today I have with me Gabriel Skelton, Head of AI Solutions at OpenBots. Gabriel, thank you for joining me today. How's it going?
Going very well. Excited to speak to you, Tony.
Very nice to see you again. We are recording on Friday, August 16th. So I'm assuming, and according to LinkedIn, you are in Florida, Fort Lauderdale. So basically north of Miami. So I'm assuming it's 110 degrees and 110% humidity right now.
Correct. That's actually where you came to Florida a few months ago. We met at one of the digital insurance conferences, but it is pretty hot and it's actually pretty humid today as well.
All right. We always give the guests a chance to give the elevator pitch. What is OpenBots?
I love it. So OpenBots is an unstructured document automation platform specifically for brokers and carriers to process documents in a much more accurate, much faster, and more streamlined way. And of course, after you grab data, after you make sense of unstructured data, you need to then use data entry to input that data into systems of record.
Okay, so unstructured document processing.
Yeah.
All right. So on the broker side,
yeah,
life is, and I've never been a broker, right? I'm a former underwriter, but I interacted with brokers a lot as an underwriter, as a sales manager, nowadays as a recruiter. So as a broker, life is interesting in that you have to get a lot of data for the underwriter to be able to quote the policy. And that data comes from a lot of different places, might not be a nice Excel file. So what type of things are they able to process through your system?
Yeah, so great question. So one of the most popular that insurance brokers do is policy renewals. So when it comes to policy renewals, that's an area that can obviously affect and impact customer retention. And if it's done fully manually, it's very easy for things to slip through the cracks, especially because you typically need to perform a quality check within 90 days. So what we can do is, most brokers use Applied Epic or any basically agency management system, or they have their own. And what we do basically is, as those policy renewals come up in an automated fashion, a bot's going to monitor, usually either some kind of email inbox, sometimes it's already in Applied Epic, or it's usually a specific folder. We'll monitor that and then wait for any document to come in, or we have some kind of automated to get the renewals. Once we do that, we can grab a specific data point from the renewal, and then at that point, we can check the data and then input that data into the correct system. And across that framework, basically, we can flag it to people to make sure that people are focusing on basically high IQ tasks, not focusing on the mundane drudgery, but most of it is automated, and they can make sure that they never have any policy renewals slip through the cracks, which in turn affects their revenue positively and can impact their impact their revenue negatively if not done correctly.
Okay. When you say the bot monitors the renewal, what specific is it looking at?
So it's looking at the actual policy renewal, and for example, things like insured name, policy number, all the data points that are on it, to make sure that they're accurate and to make sure that we have the data needed to process every single policy. And the point is that there's people doing this manually currently that have to basically get that data, look at it, look through a number of policies and actually make sure it's correct, and then input that data into the end system as well. If that makes sense.
Okay, so currently, how long does that process take, and how long does it take with OpenBots?
So that's a very good question. So basically, it's difficult to gauge how long the process takes because it depends on the amount of people that you have currently, and basically the size of what you are. In terms of automating it, it's pretty simple to automate when it comes to brokers, depending on their size and how much their deposit going to. But of course, with automation, it's a much more scalable way. There's an infinite amount of basically processing time that automation has, which is people, because you want your people to go home at 5 p.m. But in general, to build an automation like that, usually 4 to 6 weeks. So 4 to 6 weeks, you can kind of get something that is fully fledged in production. And as you go along, you might have to tweak it as you go along to make sure it can go. But very quick to automate it versus having to train an employee who might leave, or you want basically the staff that you do have to focus on high IQ tasks and have the automation basically support them. And that's kind of the way that it works.
Okay, and it looks like according to a website, looks like it integrates with Applied, it integrates with Vertafore, right there, the top two. Hawksoft is probably number 3. You also integrate with Duck Creek, Guidewire, and Surety. Okay, so you've got the great bulk of the AMSs covered when it comes to your ability to integrate. Where did the idea come from? How did you guys realize that this was needed within insurance?
So it came in kind of by accident. So the reason why is our company we're about 5 years old in terms of when we went to market, but we're about 8 to 9 years old in terms of having built the product. And originally we built the product for a very large carrier, one of the largest carriers in the world, and before we were actually created. And we built this product and were able to really help them actually on the legal side. They were getting all of these legal documentation that they had a lot of people that would have to basically look at these denials, and they were having a lot of slip through the cracks because they did not respond to that attorney documentation. Basically, they would lose the lawsuit and they were losing millions of dollars. So we had a way with technology. At that time, we actually weren't even using AI. At that time, we were using more complex machine learning to basically train this legal documentation and try to grab the specific data and make sense of it based on the positioning data. And it was basically a slower, less accurate way to do it, but it still added a huge amount of value because, once again, none of those denials were kind of slipping through the cracks. So we took that, made it a lot better, incorporated a lot of artificial intelligence, of course, now generative artificial intelligence to make it faster. And that's kind of how everything started. So we built that product then and said, hold on, this can be applicable heavily to broker carriers and other industries. That's why when legal came, healthcare came in, lending, all these different industries as well. But basically, it all started with just an actual problem that an insurer had when they were losing money on.
Okay. What kind of feedback are you getting from the clients, from the brokers that you're deployed with? What are they saying about it?
So great question. It's very convenient. So the people that care about this the most are the people directly within operations that this is impacting. Because if you think about it, if you're doing a manual process and then you're out of the office, well, now there's a backup. So that backup may not directly even be doing that role. They may be doing another role. They just step away from that and go into it. So the point is, when you can use this to take over the parts of the job that basically make you want to rip your head off, right? Because you have to do the process, but you want to obviously be motivated and doing things that require brain power. It's very convenient and very beneficial and efficient and helpful to take over the mundane pieces. Again, bots are only so smart, and you only want to use automation for the pieces of a job that a person doesn't like to do. If they don't like to do it, well, that's not motivating them, right? Then they feel like they have to do this, and it eventually is going to creep up on their efficiency, take energy away from their actual job. And the general feedback we're doing is, this is super helpful. We now can have 10 people and can do the work of 15 or 20 people. That's the typical approach, and long-term and significantly helps with basically employee retention as well, which inevitably affects customer satisfaction in a positive way.
Okay. What is the pricing like?
So great question. So basically, we pride ourselves since the beginning on being consumption based. So the way we work is that as insurer basically processes more documents or processes more runtime, like if they're doing a lot of data entry or reconciliation of data, so basically the bot emulating human actions, it's all based on what we're actually doing, rather than the traditional approach is, hey, here's a licensing cost and make use of it, how you can make use of it. We don't do that. We are fully consumption based, so basically we can actually grow with our clients as they grow and as they build more and more automation. So the more value we bring to them, the cost slowly increases, but incrementally, so that way return on investment is never sacrificed.
Okay. What else is in the development pipeline that you can
So
already speak about?
yeah, I think that's an excellent question. So one of the major pieces today that's made a big impact that was one of the most recent releases, not recent, but we released it 2 or 3 years ago, but we're consistently adding to it, is being able to make sense of unstructured data. It started with just, hey, is there data in an email? As in, obviously in the insurance industry, a lot of data is in either email or a document. It's the majority of the data. So that's usually where the unstructured data is. We do a good job of making sense of that data in a fast way to make things easier. But then the additional pieces have been, well, what's next? So the next part was, well, we had to incorporate tables, right? We're dealing with like commission statements. Some of these have like very large and long tables that we have to go through. So it's not we've built technology that can immediately understand some of those tables as well. Things like signatures of a document is signed. So some of the more complex things, that's kind of, so we're making it so we can understand more and more and more unstructured data. So that includes basically, to start, obviously, a lot of companies can handle this a core form. Core forms tend to be more of structured forms. They have a fixed structure. They're more like structured plus in the sense that they're structured, but they have a lot of embedded basically data within it. But in general, it's structured. But then you move on, as we mentioned, policy renewals, commission statements, deck pages, so loss run statements. So it depends on what piece of it you're into, but basically it goes on and on throughout, especially insurance applications. So carriers are very intrigued in insurance applications and how they can utilize this to take out a lot of the manual work from insurance applications, get that data directly into their policy system of record. That's more on the Guidewire, Duck Creek side. So that's that. And then lastly, the next stage. So again, the point of this is that we're basically interacting with documents and unstructured data in the same way humans are, like literally plain English. So we made it way more simple with generative AI. With literally, think about if you have a loss run form and you want to have the policy number from it, we're literally asking it, what is policy number? Like, it's that simple, and it's able to get it. So by doing that, that opens things up to do things faster for people that are non-technical to also use this technology, and basically, cheaper, faster, better, of course.
Okay, so you mentioned that carrier side is coming, which is gigantic. But back when I was a middle market underwriter, my UA and especially our processing people spent just hours digesting long schedules and long accord forms where we might or might not actually have a chance at writing that policy. Right, just because it got submitted doesn't mean that it will be competitive or whatever. Anyway, a super inefficient process. Having a way to digest it quickly would be fantastic. Is the carrier side of the product already live, or is that on the way? What does that side look like?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The benefit is that we don't really, like in the past, they would basically have to train documents and basically feed in an AI engine or a machine learning engine a bunch of document samples, like hundreds and thousands of document samples, and then it would learn. It's almost like it would become almost like a baby to a toddler, and then an adult. It would kind of learn and get more and more accurate over time. That's kind of the antiquated version of doing it. So we've been able to implement a lot on the side very quickly. So for example, one we did for a carrier was basically they had to set up new policy applications manually, and then their agents would fill the data in, like basically in a PDF, and then they had to basically underwriters would go in and manually populate that data. Sorry, the data would be manually populated. Underwriters would use that data to create quotes. So what we did was we basically automated a huge piece of the process. So our bot would basically log into their policy administration system, check if a quote already exists. If it does, automation stop there. A human gets involved. If it doesn't, then the automation can keep going. So we only want to automate the pieces of a process that are non-subjective. You want to keep the subjectivity to humans because they're going to do that best. But the more they focus on that subjectivity, the more efficient they are versus focusing on the lower IQ pieces. But basically, once the automation finds that it does exist, then it keeps moving on and taking over all of the data entry and the manual tasks within, the Guidewire, Duck Creek, or the actual system of record. And then it can take over all those tasks and finally basically process the majority of that data to make it easier for underwriters to review it and make decisions.
All right, makes sense. That definitely makes sense. Getting rid of all that manual stuff is big for our industry. Thank you for the time today.
Absolutely, Tony. Absolutely. Thank you very much for the time today.